Hello everyone, a very good afternoon to all of you. My name is Anubhuti Banerjee and my pronouns are she and her. I don't know how many of you have been talking about pronouns today, but at least I would like to start with that. So the topic that I've chosen is called Giving Wings to Your Inclusion Journey. These wings are not the ones that Red Bull gives you. These are rather wings that you provide your own employees as well as your own brands to be more inclusive. Let's move on to the next slide. So this is a question that I want to ask everyone here. I'm sure all of you know how steel looks like this looks like this in case. It looks like something like this, and steel, as you know, is the entire foundation of a lot of things we talk about as societies. I mean, this building is standing because of steel, all the cars that you came in is because of steel. But do you know the journey of steel? Do you know how steel is formed? What is the journey of steel? Let me give you a little bit of a picture. So steel is nothing like that shiny, lustrous, strong material that you look at, which is the foundation of our society. It starts as a very, what I would say, unstable ore, deep down under the closet of the ground, which you have to mine out, which you have to take out. And after that, it goes through a lot of very different processes, some of which is being heated up to temperatures hotter than fires of volcanoes, and then cooled down right to the temperatures of Antarctica or something like that maybe. I also do not know what the temperatures are. And only then does it become something like the foundation of the society that I talked about, something like, the sea link that we are talking about. But if you actually look at it, this is also the journey of every trans person. Because every trans person starts very different from their shiny and lustrous and strong personality that you're looking at. I am a trans person and I didn't start my journey something like this. Never mind those. The journey of every trans person happens only when they go through a lot of these trials and tribulations, just like being heated up to very high temperatures. Well, at least we are not heated up to very high temperatures anymore, but there are a lot of familial, social, as well as institutional obstacles that trans people have to go through. And not just trans people, the LGBTQ community at large also has to go through a lot of these institutional, social, even familial obstacles. Only then they are able to, go and become something of a strong thing like steel we are talking about. So the reason why I tell this story is that every time you think of trying to imagine a trans person or transition, you can always imagine steel. And that's when you know what is the power of transformation, how much of a transformation can happen, and that these transformations are the reason why we as humans, why we as people are so strong. We've created these societies and things like that. Let me take you on a small journey of how I became a woman of steel. Now, I told you that, just like the iron ore, I did not start where I am right now. I, in fact, looked very different when I was born, as well as all throughout a very large part of my life. I looked very different. I had a different name, a name that you would not hear anymore. But all throughout that time, there was one essential feeling that I knew was true about myself, and that was that I was a woman. And in spite of what my family, what my friends or people around me would tell, this was a truth that I knew very, very clearly. However, growing up in India, I grew up in a very small town, actually, like a very, very small town of maybe of 200, 300 people. Growing up there, I didn't really have a lot of examples. I didn't really see a lot of other LGBTQ people there. I didn't really see a lot of people who had, who I could relate to, who I could understand that, okay, this is something normal, this is something that everyone else or someone else also goes through, which I sadly did not have at that point of time. And which is why a very long period of time, I used to think that I am the only person who is like this. And with that comes all of these doubts that we have as people, especially if I'm talking about somewhere around my teenage years. I went through something which a lot of trans people go through, called gender dysphoria, which is basically finding it very, very difficult to inhabit the body that you're living in. And it's the sort of age when people are trying to decide what they become in life. We're trying to decide whether they will be a doctor or an engineer or an artist or something like that. And that's when I was trying to decide, or I decided that what I want to be in my life is to be a woman. Now, this was something that I knew about myself, but I couldn't just go ahead and do it. I couldn't just go ahead and tell my parents that, look, this is who I am. I'm quite sure, like, maybe in the world today, we have perhaps reached a stage where a child who's in their teenage or even younger than that can go ahead and tell their parents that this is who I am, and that is what we have been working for. But back then I didn't have that. So what I needed very strongly is that I have an identity of myself and I have independence. I have independence from my parents. Now that comes off in the form of social independence, emotional independence, and of course the most important, or the one that matters a lot in this world, is financial independence. And that is exactly where workplace is coming, and that is where we all have gathered in here in order to enable that part of it for a lot of people. And also, as I said, workplaces give you an identity. Workplace is something that we know from our childhood, is a place where you are known for the work that you do, you are known for what qualities you bring to the table, what qualities you can display, rather than who you are, what you've grown up as, and things like that. Which is why, for me, one of the biggest, or probably the biggest enablers was I joined Tata Steel, which is the only company I've worked for. I joined it from my college as an engineer, and my first couple of years in Tata Steel were very interesting. Now, as you know, right now, I used to always be this kind of person who would really like doing things a little differently, like to bring ideas on the table, even if there are like wild ideas, even if there are things that you could do or couldn't do. I used to like bring it up to the people who I had to report to, or even to higher management and things like that. And for me, the first couple of years in Tata Steel were really, really good. I got some really good opportunities. Like I said, working, I got an opportunity to go to Canada from Tata Steel, and a lot of people in Tata Steel used to wonder, like, Canada, Tata Steel, ye kaise ho sakta hai? So I got a lot of these opportunities, and I was like finding a really good time, you can say, in my career, in my life. But there was one thing that, the old thing that was still there with me, which is the fact that I still hadn't really achieved my goal, which is to be a woman. And the more years I spent, the more difficult it appeared to me. Now, this is something that I would say a lot of people here, transitioning doesn't really depend on age. Like, the reason I'm calling it out here is because a lot of us grew up with that fear that if we can't transition very young, we probably may not ever. But let me tell you that that's not the truth. But at least that was a fear. That was a reason why I had to get things, very quickly. Now, people told me that, working at Tata Steel, it's a very traditional company. I think someone here asked a question, is that what do we do when traditional, people are, come face to face with concepts which are really, not traditional, which have not been spoken in traditional cultures. So that is the kind of, information that a lot of people used to give me. My well-wishers, my friends, they would say that, no, you cannot really come out at Tata Steel. You cannot really, do all these things. It's it's a Tata company, it's in India. All of these things used to be there. Like, can you really do it here, or would it be better for you to, probably work in an MNC or probably go out of India or do something like that. But something that, like I said, that my age was something that I was very important, that I, got this done at a certain age. And the second fact that was that I had this trust in Tata Steel. The values that we had, I had been exposed to the first couple of years, like I told you. The experimental way of thinking, pioneering, that's I think one of the values that Tata Steel and the Tata Group in general has always held on to is the spirit of pioneering, the spirit of doing something different, even if no one else has done it. Whether it is making steel for the first time, whether it is taking a flight for the first time, or whether it is establishing an LGBTQ Employee Resource Group or something like that for the first time. So that spirit of pioneering I had in me. And the other thing that was going on at that time, this was around, say, 2014, 15 is the time that I'm talking about. I'm like 2-3 years old in the organization. And at that point of time, diversity and inclusion had started in Tata Steel with an initiative called Mosaic. Now, Mosaic, as you understand, is a panel where very different colors come together and make it a piece of art, make it something worth looking at. And that is the idea that we had when starting Mosaic, which is basically bringing together all these different facets of people, different facets of identity within our workplace, and create a beautiful picture. So Mosaic started with inclusion of, initially at least, it spoke about increasing the percentage of women we had at our workplace. Now, very honestly, again, when I say Tata Steel, a lot of people would conjure up images of, of men primarily who would be working in a workplace. But Tata Steel wanted to and made it, made a huge effort to change this image. To change this image not only at our workplaces, but also outside, reaching out to campuses, reaching out to all the different stages that students or people who join us come from, to try and make sure that we have a larger percentage of women. We don't look at manufacturing, we don't look at a company like Tata Steel as one only for men. That was very, very important for us. And during that time, as it often happens, when I found that this was going on, this was naturally for me an ally that I had found out, because even I would say add a small percentage of women to the workforce by transitioning. That's what I thought of, and that's when I went and spoke to our then Chief Diversity Officer and now Vice President of Human Resources, Ms. Atrey Sanyal. And even the first day I spoke about it, she gave me something that was very important. It may not be that we got the language right the first time. I mean, the mail that I had sent had terms like gender identity and gender expression. Back in 2014, people weren't talking about it, let me tell you. But it wasn't the vocabulary that was important. What was important is that the first day, she told me that you will be, not only will you be allowed to transition here. I mean, I don't think that should be a question anyone should even raise in workplaces. But what she said is that I know that your journey would be difficult because we have not done this before. Again, pioneering. But what we would do is to try and ensure your journey becomes as smooth as possible and give you all the resources so that you can make a change that affects other people, that affects all the other people who you know about, that not the people that you know about, but you know that there are people out there in the world, even in our own company, for whom this change matters, for whom this, this is something that is important, and we'll give you the resources if you're ready to lead it. And I realized that, this is my shot. at trying to make a change in a 100-plus-year-old company, a company that, even the ethos are, connected with India in some cases. And that's where the journey of Wings started. And that is the Wings we were talking about. Now, the Wings we talk here is something that, like, at least for me, was with the launch of an employee resource group, an LGBTQ employee resource group. This we were talking about, like I said, 2015, 2016, when Section 377 wasn't still struck down. So what the best thing that we could do at that point of time was to create an employee resource group. And to my information, this was probably in Manufacturing India, the first LGBTQ employee resource group that we had. And one of, if I am to come to our journey, we at Tata Steel in 2023, I'm talking about 2016 when we started all these steps, in 2023, we were identified as a Global Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Lighthouse by the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum, for the first time, did a Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Lighthouse. Now, lighthouses are basically organizations who show the path of, in this case, diversity and inclusion to other organizations by being examples of, of inclusion as well as, diversity and inclusion. So here are some of the here are some of the numbers that we put in our application to the World Economic Forum where we were recognized. There were, as you can see, the numbers speak for themselves. I wouldn't really go ahead and speak about them, but there is one that you would probably see somewhere in the middle, says that there are 100 transgender women hired as of 2022. Sorry. I think I got it wrong again. Now, this happened because of the steps that I had taken or we had taken very early on where we put down the foundation of LGBTQ inclusion. Now, to be able to have 100 transgender people, now I often hear the question whether, whether companies should go ahead and hire diverse talent or whether they should first set their policies right, whether clean your house at the first time before you invite someone in. Now, it is what I believe is a chicken and egg question, like which should come first, which should come later. So the fact is that whenever anyone has asked about the chicken and egg question, both the chicken and egg have been in existence. So that is what I believe, that both of them have to be part of your your policies, your intentions and initiatives. One is definitely we need to create the policies that are required in order to make our workplace inclusive. And that is where, to some extent, the experiences that we had by creating Wings earlier than perhaps a lot of other organizations created, the language that we probably brought into our organization, the sensitization that we probably brought into our organization, that was very important. But also the intention must be there of inclusion. Now, such a large number of inclusion was driven by a very strong intention because the fact is that Tata Steel is based primarily in East India and in the states of Jharkhand and Odisha and things and places there. And the trans community has been typically economically excluded from very large, excluded from economy in general. And especially in the east part of the country, we realized that there weren't really any initiatives or very small initiatives for inclusion of trans people, for inclusion of LGBTQ people. So for us, taking this decision was also important so that we can put a first step forward even if we did not know what happens next. We did not know how, how people within the organizations would react or outside. But sensitization, and these are some of the activities that we did, where we talk about, creating inclusion amongst colleagues, creating content which, or resources, I would say, which matter to the LGBTQ community, whether that is, the policies that we have, or whether it is something outside, like probably you could have a explainer or to your trans employees, even people who've not come out, that this is the process of how a government ID change happens, or this is how you change your name in the company email or something like that. So those content is something that you create. We created some activities so that, that they are not all boring. We connected with a lot of campuses so that we could spread out the word that, that Tata Steel is LGBTQ inclusive. You might have heard of a very interesting program that we run called Queerious, which gives opportunities for a lot of LGBTQ people across India to participate and go through an internship in Tata Steel. I myself have mentored someone from that internship, so it is something that, basically them coming over and being exposed to seeing that there are other LGBTQ people in this organization gives them a whole different level of confidence. In fact, when we started Wings, there was a very interesting thing that happened is that someone called me. They were going to join Tata Steel from IIT KGP, and they got in touch with me through various different networks, and they said that, look, I've heard that Tata Steel has just launched this employee resource group. I initially was not thinking of joining Tata Steel. Initially, I was thinking of, giving GRE and going outside. But now that I see it, I think I'll join that. And that was, an immediate result that we saw. The steps that you take have an immediate result on the picture that you have out there in the world. Now, just some of the activities that we've done, working with other corporates, giving talks like this, as well as connecting with the community. I think whenever we talk about inclusion, we cannot really leave community behind, because community is ultimately going to be the biggest benefactors from whatever activities that we do. For example, in Tata Steel, I've seen that whenever I go out to, say, an LGBTQ hiring festival, or wherever there are a large number of LGBTQ people, they always talk about the policies or, the inclusion that Tata Steel has brought about. That is the kind of, you can say, pull has been created. Even here in Mumbai, people would know about something that has happened so far away in Jamshedpur. So that is the kind of pull that has been created within the community. I'm not even talking about outside the community. Now, just speaking about why, say, LGBTQ inclusion is a business case, is that, of course, it's a goal of leaving no one behind. And if you actually look at it in this forum, this is a retail forum. So we're talking about a market opportunity, right? We're talking about our customers are going to be, LGBTQ, what are they looking for? So if you look at globally, somewhere close to 4 trillion, according to the World Bank, is the amount of purchasing power that LGBTQ people have. Even in India, somewhere close to 2% of the GDP is amount of money that we can make by being inclusive, by being LGBTQ inclusive. The other part is, of course, about workplace equality, which I talked about. If you really look at it, and this was one of the factors why we started inclusion in Tata Steel, because this survey was done something around 2018 by the National Human Rights Commission, and around less than 4% of trans people have had good experiences at the workplaces that they're working from. It's not just being denied jobs, but also within workplaces, the kind of work environments, the kind of language use, the kind of safety that they felt, or psychological safety that they felt, is a very, very low number. And which is why this whole LGBTQ or trans inclusion hiring drive was something that we did. And also, one of the major things that I also talked about is like 85% of recent college graduates want to work in LGBTQI inclusive environments, and 85% does not include LGBTQ people only. It includes everyone. So talking about retail especially, I think there is a very important impact on the brand that, or the value of the brand that you create. And LGBTQ inclusion is seen by Gen Zs and millennials, and of course by the overall market as something to be very, very, something very positive, and it is correlated very heavily with how people perceive your brand to be. And this is not just LGBTQ people who will be influenced by it, but the overall market who look at LGBTQ inclusion as something positive, as something inclusive, and therefore becomes one of the values of your brand. Another fact is that, we as organizations aren't really very good at benchmarking ourselves. So benchmarking with the industry, checking how well are we doing with other companies, whether it is a Tata Steel, whether it's a Godrej, or whether it is any other organization that you feel that has done a good job. I think benchmarking is also something that makes a huge difference. The other part, which is very important for LGBTQ people in retail, and which is how does the customer experience of your brand, how is the customer experience of your brand with LGBTQ people? Now, some of the things is that it really matters. Now, I'm talking as a person who belongs to this community, is that it really matters if we feel included at every step of the journey. Now, it's not enough for me to just know that Tata Steel is doing inclusion, or say, for example, Air India is doing inclusion. The difference maker would be when a trans person goes and tries to put in their name and the gender marker, when they find that there is an option that includes them. That is where the real, I would say, shift of mentality is going to come from. So I think this is something that we quite often forget when we are looking at our markets, because markets are primarily driven by numbers. And I don't think the LGBTQ community as per numbers would be so large. But if you look at the purchasing power, the kind of influencing power that the LGBTQ community has, it becomes a larger market than what you think it is. Even a person who does not identify as anywhere in the gender binary, who does identify somewhere in the gender binary, even for them, seeing a non-binary option makes a lot of difference. Other things, of course, the websites, as well as one of the most important things is that how comfortable are LGBTQ people when they are interacting with, when they are interacting with any brand, the frontline staff of that brand. Do they understand what exactly are the needs of someone who, someone who's LGBTQ, that there are various different intersections within this as well. I think those things are something that especially retail organizations should keep in mind, because the fact is that it's not just the workplace inclusion that makes a difference. Yes, workplace inclusion makes a difference for people within the organization. I would say for Tata Steel, it has made a difference, as I said. 100+ people across, management, across manufacturing, across mining. That is a very large number, yes. But the actual impact that comes in the ideas, comes in the thoughts and the leadership that these people can bring in. Now, someone like me who has had, I am not from HR, I don't work in HR. I work with the Chief Information Officer's office, and I lead things like our digital communications, our strategies, as well as work as the chief of staff of the entire IT department. So in a department like that, as well as working with CXOs within Tata Steel, as well as sometimes outside Tata Steel, in many cases, what I hear is that in mindset, sometimes all they need to change is to have evidence, is to see that a trans person, a person like me, is standing there, is part of all the discussions of CXOs or whatever, is leading their department. So all of these come as an influence, come as an impact that makes other queer people, whether within the organization, whether outside the organization. This changes perspectives of how someone can actually aspire to be, someone in any of these companies. So with that, I'd like to sort of end my talk. Thank you so much.